A corrupt cop laughed in court when a quiet black woman took the stand, until she pulled out a DEA badge and exposed every crime he thought he'd buried. The courtroom wasn't packed, but it didn't need to be. The people who mattered were already in the room. Judge Arlo Kendrick sat stiff behind the bench, tapping his pen as if it were a nervous tick. The bailiff yawned behind a poker face. And off to the left, Detective Kyle Renshaw sat leaning back in his chair like the place belonged to him. His suit was sharp, grey with a faint pinstripe. His tie was too loose, like he wanted to remind people he didn't really answer to anyone. That smirk on his face? Permanent, like he knew nothing could touch him. Then she walked in. A quiet woman with honey-brown skin, pulled back curls, and no earrings. She wore a simple olive jacket over a loose grey top, plain slacks, no makeup, no jewelry, just calm eyes that scanned the courtroom without blinking. Her name was called. "Mariah Tillman," the clerk said. "Please take the stand." She walked with no hesitation, no nervous flick of the hands, no fake smile. Just straight to the witness chair. A few people in the pews gave her a curious glance. Who was she? Looked like someone's aunt, someone's neighbor, probably another resident from the neighborhood this case was tied to. The defense attorney stood, checking his notes. Renshaw leaned over to whisper something. It was loud enough to be heard by 3 people nearby. "Must have brought her straight off the block." A few quiet chuckles floated through the courtroom. Renshaw leaned back like he was bored already. Mariah heard him. She didn't look over. She just folded her hands in her lap and waited. The judge raised an eyebrow, but didn't say a word. The defense attorney stepped forward and began what should have been a routine questioning. "Ms. Tillman, can you state your relationship to the defendant or anyone involved in this case?" "No personal relationship," she answered, voice even. "But I do know of him." "Can you describe what you witnessed on the night of April 3rd, outside the corner of Shields and Maple?" Mariah leaned forward slightly. "I was there as part of an ongoing assignment. I observed Detective Renshaw interact with 2 individuals, both minors, outside a liquor store. One of them had a backpack. Renshaw searched it without cause and pocketed a small amount of cash. He then allowed both teens to walk free." The defense attorney scoffed. "Did you personally see the exchange of cash?" "Yes," she said. "I have it on video." At that, a flicker of movement crossed Renshaw's face. Barely a twitch in his eye. But Mariah caught it. The judge tilted his head. "You say you were there on assignment, Ms. Tillman. What kind of assignment?" There was a pause. Mariah reached into the inside of her jacket and pulled out a flat leather case. She opened it and held it up. "Special Agent Mariah Tillman, United States Drug Enforcement Administration." You could hear the shift in the air. Not silence. Something sharper. Like the floor had cracked, and nobody knew whether to look up or down. Renshaw's arms slid slowly off the back of his chair. That smirk? Gone. He looked like he'd been slapped across the face and hadn't caught who did it. Mariah continued, calm as before. "For the last 8 months, I've been working undercover in the Roosevelt Heights neighborhood. My role was to build evidence on a drug operation that, unfortunately, has been under protection from within the Fresno Police Department. My assignment was classified. Until now." She turned, not to the judge, but to Renshaw. "Detective Renshaw was one of my primary subjects." The courtroom buzzed, but the judge raised his hand. "Silence, or I'll clear the room." Mariah didn't break eye contact with Renshaw. "You remember me now, don't you?" she said softly. "I was the woman you stopped twice without reason. The one whose house your partner accidentally raided. The one who watched you take cash, drugs, and cut side deals with corner boys like it was nothing." The defense attorney was frozen. The prosecutor leaned back, a slow smile creeping across his lips. He didn't need to say anything. Mariah had already done what 10 months of internal reports hadn't. Renshaw opened his mouth. No words came out. "But to understand how we got here, we have to go back 8 months. To a different woman, in a different part of town, living a different life." The heat in Fresno was merciless that day. Not just the sun. Something in the air felt thick. Not that it mattered. Mariah Tillman sat in a parked sedan with tinted windows outside a run-down corner store on Brawley Avenue. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, but her mind wasn't on the sweat creeping down her back. It was on the name scrawled across the top of the file in the passenger seat. Kyle Renshaw, decorated detective. Commendations stacked high. But behind the scenes, things didn't add up. Complaints dismissed. Footage lost. Arrests that seemed too convenient. And now, the DEA suspected he was part of something deeper. Let me be blunt, her supervisor had told her earlier that week. We've had our eye on Renshaw for almost 2 years. He's not just dirty, he's a leak. He's tipping off dealers, planting evidence, protecting runners. But every time we try to pin him down, the case goes sideways. Mariah didn't blink. And you want me to live right in the middle of it? Exactly, the supervisor said. We need someone who can play the long game. No backup, no badge. We need him to forget you're a cop. She glanced again at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The wig helped. Loose curls, a little frizz. No makeup, just sunblock. She wore an oversized tank top with bleach stains and jeans that clung to her hips. The kind of look people didn't question, but rarely respected. She had a cover story, a new name, rent receipts, utility bills, a teenage cousin who'd moved in with her. DEA's back office had built the entire persona from scratch. She was now Raina Lawson, a 38-year-old ex-bartender who got laid off during the pandemic and moved into a low-rent duplex just a few blocks from the known drug hotspots. And just like that, Mariah vanished. For the next 8 months, Raina Lawson would show up. She unpacked her fake groceries. She greeted the nosy neighbor with the smoker's cough. She walked 3 blocks every evening and waved at the man who fixed bikes out of his garage. She paid in cash. She complained about prices. She laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. And every few nights, she'd go for a walk and record what she saw. Small stuff at first. A dealer in a red Impala handing off pills to a high schooler. A boy no older than 15 being frisked by an officer who didn't even ask for ID. Corner stores being used as fronts. Everyone knew. Nobody talked. But after the first few weeks, one name started popping up more than any other. Renshaw. She heard it whispered like he was a boogeyman. He comes when he wants, said a woman outside the laundromat. Takes what he wants, too. Don't look him in the eye, said the guy who bagged groceries for tips. Man don't got no soul. Then she finally saw him. 2 months into the operation. Black SUV, dark sunglasses, cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He walked like he had no doubts, no hesitation. He slapped the roof of the Impala she'd seen earlier, leaned into the window, exchanged words, and laughed. The dealer handed something over. A bag, maybe. Renshaw didn't hide it. Mariah stood half a block away, pretending to wait for the bus. Her phone captured the whole thing from her purse. Later that night, she logged it in the system using the encrypted channel. Subject made direct contact with suspected dealer. No warrant. Took package from driver side window. No search, no citation, no arrest. She attached the footage. But still, Renshaw kept skating. He was bold, almost like he knew no one could touch him. Mariah knew why. The entire precinct was too afraid, or too comfortable to call him out. Some were probably involved. Others just didn't want the heat. Either way, Renshaw operated like a man with no leash. Still, she was careful. She stayed out of his way. Never made direct contact, never said his name. She kept her cousin out of sight and stuck to her routine. But she was about to get too close. Because Renshaw wasn't just a crooked cop. He was the kind of man who noticed patterns. And Mariah was starting to show up more than he liked. Roosevelt Heights looked like any other tired neighborhood on Fresno's west side. A liquor store on every corner, boarded up buildings with graffiti you stopped noticing after a week, and a church with a crooked cross that still played hymns every Sunday at noon. Nobody had time for strangers. Mariah, or rather Raina Lawson, wasn't treated like one for long. She made herself small, kept to herself, but showed up just enough to be remembered. Bought groceries at the discount store, cashed out a fake EBT card at the gas station register, like the rest of the block. Let people assume whatever they wanted. She was the woman who kept her head down, who didn't ask questions, who didn't open the door after dark. But she watched, she recorded. She learned fast. The kid across the alley, Tevin, barely 15, kept a loaded backpack and a burner phone. She watched him sell, watched him run, watched him hide behind trash bins when certain cars rolled by. He wasn't the target, but he was a thread. One thread led to another. Mrs. Irene, the old woman with the plastic-covered couch, knew everything and everyone. And she didn't like cops. "They come around here with their fancy words," she said one evening from her front porch. "Say they're cleaning up the streets, but all they do is clean folks out." Maria just nodded. That was enough. But she hadn't seen him yet. Not up close. Not until the 4th week. She was walking back from the corner store, carrying a single roll of paper towels, when the black SUV pulled up too fast. The tires scraped the curb. Out stepped Detective Kyle Renshaw. He didn't have his badge out. Didn't need to. The look on his face was enough. People turned away, disappeared into shops. One man even dropped his soda and just kept walking. Mariah kept moving, pretending not to notice him. "Hey," he called out. "You, with the paper towels." She stopped, turned slowly. He walked up. No smile. "Haven't seen you around before," he said, looking her over. "You knew?" She gave a shrug. "Moved in a month ago. Down on Pratt." "Pratt?" he repeated. "You with someone?" "Just me and my cousin." He stared. "You on Section 8? Maybe." Renshaw grinned. "Cute." She blinked. "Something I can help you with, officer?" His smile faded just slightly. "Nope. Just getting a feel for the neighborhood." He stepped in close. Way too close. She could smell the cigarette smoke on his jacket. Her instincts kicked in. She kept her expression blank, but her heart had started a slow, heavy rhythm. "You see anything funny?" he said. "You come to me, not the others. They don't handle things right." He tapped 2 fingers on the paper towel roll. "Gotta keep clean, right?" Then he turned and walked back to the SUV. She stood still until the engine faded. The moment she got back home, she locked the door and uploaded the bodycam footage from her necklace chain. She wrote the report calmly, but her fingers were tight on the keys. Subject made contact with undercover agent. No reason given for approach. Implicit threat issued. Close proximity. Tone suggestive. That was the first encounter. After that, she saw him regularly. He'd cruise slowly through the blocks like he was window shopping for trouble. Sometimes he'd stop a group of kids and pat them down without cause. Sometimes he didn't even ask questions, just searched their pockets and moved on. And it wasn't just Renshaw. There were 2 other officers, Benton and Ruiz, who followed his lead. They weren't as loud about it, but they moved like they were part of the same machine. Mariah kept her cool. She filmed what she could, wrote it all down, waited. But things started to shift. She began to notice people watching her. Not neighbors, not gang members. Cops. One afternoon, while checking her mailbox, she caught a cruiser idling across the street. No call, no radio, just sitting there. When she turned to walk inside, it drove off slow. Another time, her trash can was turned over and her recycling was dumped. Only hers. She was being tested. And she couldn't afford to slip. But she wouldn't have to wait long before Renshaw gave her something bigger, something that would push this assignment to the edge. Renshaw wasn't sloppy. He was arrogant. That's what made him dangerous. He didn't hide the way he moved through Roosevelt Heights because he believed no one would dare challenge him. And for a long time, no one did. Mariah had spent years undercover before. She'd watched small-time pushers, mid-level dealers, even a cartel enforcer who ran a fake cleaning business in Modesto. But this was different. This was a man with a badge, a gun, and a circle of silence protecting him from the inside. The deeper she looked, the more tangled it got. Renshaw wasn't acting alone. Officer Benton, his shadow, ran interference during most of the illegal stops. He'd pull up 2 minutes before Renshaw arrived, flash his lights, and claim there had been a call. There never was. Then Renshaw would step in, search a car, seize whatever he wanted, and walk off like it was nothing. Officer Ruiz was quieter, more careful. He did the paperwork, cleaned up the messes, made sure charges stuck to the kids they needed to keep scared, and let the others slip through. Every time Mariah followed the paperwork trail, it bent in ways that didn't make sense. She spent hours at night pretending to watch TV, but her real attention was on her laptop. Encrypted documents, dozens of videos, sound clips recorded from her purse, her glasses, her keys, conversations between officers in alleyways, payments exchanged behind a food truck, coded language she'd learned to decode years ago. "Look, he's good for the number," Benton said in one clip. "Yeah? Good for what?" Ruiz asked. 3.5. He'll drop the rest next week. They weren't talking about arrests. They were talking about weight and cash. Mariah kept digging. A known dealer named Deshaun Wynn had a record going back to high school, but suddenly, 2 months ago, it just stopped. No charges, no court dates. And yet, he still ran product like clockwork. Why? Because he was protected. Renshaw had turned him into a street informant, but not the kind who shared information. Deshaun was paying to stay untouched, buying silence. One night, Mariah followed Deshaun's car to an abandoned building on Huron Street. She parked a block away and walked in the shadows. What she caught on video wasn't just another exchange. It was Renshaw, smoking, laughing, holding a bag of something that wasn't groceries. Deshaun passed him a stack of bills. Then Renshaw handed him a small case. Probably burner phones. Maybe cash. Maybe a clean supply to resell. When Deshaun walked away, Renshaw looked around, stared for a moment, then walked the opposite direction, whistling like a man who'd just left a family BBQ. Mariah froze, waited until he disappeared, then uploaded the clip. She tagged it. Direct exchange, suspected bribery or asset payoff. No police vehicle present, no radio dispatch. She submitted the report at 1:43 a.m. That morning, something changed. Her water was shut off. Not the whole building, just her unit. She went outside and found the valve twisted closed. A maintenance tag had been left, but it wasn't from the property company. She checked. No work order had been submitted. She got it running again, but now she knew. They were on to her. The next 2 days, her neighbor, Mr. Kingsley, warned her, quietly. "You stay out of sight. You hear me?" he said, voice trembling. "They've been asking about you. Not the regular ones. The mean ones." Mariah thanked him and kept her route tighter. No night walks, no grocery store detours. Only key surveillance from inside her car. And it paid off. One afternoon, Benton and Ruiz were caught mid-conversation outside a burger stand. "You think she's police?" Ruiz asked. "Maybe. She doesn't act scared, that's the thing." "You want me to follow her?" "No. Renshaw's gonna handle it." Mariah sat with her mouth tight shut, her fingers frozen around the recorder in her hoodie pocket. They were watching her, but now they were talking about doing something. The line had shifted, and once Renshaw crossed it, Mariah wouldn't just be in danger. She'd be in the middle of the storm. It started with a knock, not a loud one, just a single deliberate rap on the door at 10:46 p.m. Mariah had already killed the lights. She stood quietly by the edge of the window, looking through the slat in the blinds. A police cruiser parked out front. No sirens, no spotlight. Just sitting there like it belonged. She didn't move. She didn't speak. A second knock. "Raina Lawson!" a voice called out. "Fresno PD? Need a minute." She let the silence drag. Another knock. This one harder. Then a pause, and footsteps walking away. She didn't breathe until she heard the car door slam shut and the cruiser pull off. The next morning it happened again. This time she was walking home from the bus stop, 2 grocery bags in hand. The same cruiser turned the corner and rolled up beside her, slow. Window down. Renshaw behind the wheel. "Raina," he said, casual like they were neighbors. "Heard you've been settling in?" She didn't answer. He leaned his elbow out. "You always walk that slow? Or just when you're being watched?" Mariah raised her eyes. Calm. "Is there a reason you're talking to me, officer?" He chuckled. "You just seem familiar. I don't forget faces." She forced a smile. "Maybe from the store. I buy a lot of cereal." He nodded, still smiling, but his eyes were scanning her hands. "You always record your shopping trips?" She froze for half a second. It was quick, but he caught it. He tapped the roof of his car and pulled off. That night, her back window was cracked. No forced entry, no signs of a break-in, just a clean, horizontal crack right across the glass, like someone was showing her they could get in if they wanted. Mariah reported it to no one. She just sat in the kitchen that night and listened. Every car, every set of footsteps, every creak in the floorboards above her. She wasn't scared. She was calculating. Because the moment she showed fear, the game was over. 2 nights later, it escalated. Her cousin, real name Devon, a fellow agent posing as a troubled teenager, was grabbed outside the corner store. It happened fast. Devon had gone to buy a drink. 5 minutes later, he came back with a bloody lip and wide eyes. "They shoved me in a car," he said, breathing hard. "I didn't even see it coming." "Who?" Mariah asked, trying not to show panic. "Cops, no badges, no names, just 2 of them. One said, 'Tell your aunt to stop being curious.' Then they dumped me near the park." Mariah clenched her jaw. They were watching her house, her habits, her people. She filed a coded report that night. "Compromise suspected. Subject Renshaw may be aware of surveillance. Possible intimidation tactics escalating. Suggest review of timeline. Continue operation," her handler responded within an hour. "Do not abort. You're close. Keep your cover. We're watching too." It helped. A little. But something had shifted. This was no longer about catching a corrupt cop. It was now a test of endurance. Mental and emotional. Renshaw was pressing. And every time he smiled in her direction, it was a silent dare. 1 week later, he showed up at her door again. No knock this time, just footsteps on the porch. She opened the door before he could try it. "Morning," he said, chewing on a toothpick. "You lost?" she asked flatly. "Nah," he said. "Just checking in. You didn't come out for trash day. Figured you might need help." "I'm good." "You sure?" he asked, glancing behind her into the living room. "You seem a little tense lately." She stepped forward, closing the door behind her. "Officer, I've got things to do. If you're not here for a report or a search warrant, we're done." He stared at her for a long second. Then his smile dropped completely. "Be careful who you talk to," he said quietly. "You might end up saying something you can't take back." Mariah didn't answer. She stepped back inside and locked the door. That night, she sat with her gun loaded on the table. She didn't plan to use it, but it reminded her who she still was. A federal agent. She wasn't just surviving. She was setting the trap. But Renshaw had one more move to play. One that would push everything past the point of no return. Fresno's air turned colder near the end of October, but Mariah barely noticed. She wasn't sleeping. Not much, anyway. Every shadow in the alley outside her window felt like a footstep. Every flicker of headlights made her sit up straighter. She knew the operation was close to peaking, but the closer she got to exposing Renshaw, the harder he pushed back. It was a Friday when things nearly broke. She had just left the community center after volunteering for 2 hours, part of her cover as a local looking to give back. A few kids had waved goodbye. One of them, Andre, asked if she could help his mum fill out job applications the next week. Mariah smiled, said yes. Her voice cracked a little when she said it. She was getting attached. Too attached. On her walk home, she spotted a familiar figure leaning against a payphone. Deshaun Wynn. The same protected dealer she'd caught handing cash to Renshaw. He locked eyes with her and nodded slightly, as if recognizing her for the first time. That worried her. But what worried her more was what came later. That evening, her burner phone rang. Unlisted number. She didn't answer. It rang again. Same number. She picked up and didn't speak. A voice, low, gravelly, no real accent, spoke through a faint crackle. "We know who you are." Then silence. No name, no threat. Just that sentence. She hung up and turned off the phone. Inside her bedroom closet, she pulled out the black case hidden behind a stack of old towels. She opened it slowly, revealing her real badge, her spare weapon, and a data stick containing every single report she'd filed. She stared at it for a long time. Maybe it was time to pull out. But then she remembered what her handler told her. "You're close. We're watching too." She wasn't alone. At least that's what she kept telling herself. That Sunday, she went to the corner market like usual. Her steps were careful, deliberate. The block was quieter than normal. No music, no kids on bikes. Just a woman watering her plants and a man in a tank top smoking behind his fence. Inside the store, Mariah grabbed 2 bottles of water and some bread. When she walked toward the counter, the store owner, Mr. Lee, gave her a long look. "You know they ask about you," he said, not looking up from the register. "Who?" "Cops. Same one. Big voice. White guy." She nodded, slowly. "You in trouble?" Mariah gave a small shake of her head. Not yet. That night, she met Devon 3 blocks away from their safe house. He wore a hoodie pulled tight and carried a duffel bag with extra drives and burner devices. "They're circling, Ray," he said. "We need an exit plan." "Not yet," she replied. "I've almost got the meeting spot locked. Renshaw's dealing off-book behind the old train station near Olive and East. I've got the times. I just need one more drop to catch the full exchange." Devon looked frustrated. "He's already on to you. One wrong step and it's not just the mission. It's you." She nodded. "I know. But if I walk now, he disappears. Again. He goes back underground, cleans up and starts over." Devon dropped his voice. "You ready to die over it?" "No," she said. "But I'm not ready to let him walk either." They parted quietly. The next day, she wore her mic, activated 3 hidden cameras near the tracks, and waited. The drop didn't happen. Renshaw never showed. Instead, Benton did. And this time, he was looking for her. She caught it from the corner of the alley. Benton got out of his unmarked cruiser and scanned the area like he was hunting. He wasn't pretending anymore. Mariah backed into the shadows, heart thudding. She moved fast, looping around the long side of the track yard and cutting through a row of chain-link fences. She knew the back exit. She'd studied it for weeks. She got to her car, pulled out fast, and didn't stop until she was 6 blocks away. She sat in the dark, breathing hard, recording everything she could remember from the last 20 minutes. Benton was alone, circling the drop point. No transaction occurred. Suspect may have gotten spooked or received internal warning. She hit send. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from restraint. She wanted to confront him, tell him she knew, tell him it was almost over, but that would blow everything, and the only way this ended right was if she got Renshaw himself on tape. One more move, one final push. Mariah didn't sleep that night. She lay on the floor, arms crossed, her badge case beside her like a quiet reminder of who she was. Not Raina Lawson, not some anonymous woman lost in the system, but a federal agent 2 steps from closing a case that had taken nearly a year to build. She knew the end had to be controlled. Renshaw wouldn't confess. He wouldn't break. He needed to be seen, caught, with the right eyes on him. So she made a call, one she'd been saving for months. The next day she met with Special Agent Corinne Vega, an internal affairs liaison from the DOJ. Trusted. Sharp. No local ties. Vega arrived in an unmarked SUV and didn't even park close. They met at a rundown car wash on the edge of town, speaking through cracked windows. Maria handed her a drive. "This has it all. The conversations, the videos, the threats. But we don't have the drop itself. We need the product exchange." Vega stared at her. "You sure you're not compromised?" "I'm sure," Mariah said quietly. "But he knows I'm watching. That means I have to push him into thinking I'm a part of it." "You want to bait him?" "No," Mariah replied. "I want to let him think he already owns me." They laid out the plan over 15 minutes. Vega would remain close. Surveillance would monitor from 3 unmarked vans, far from the area. Mariah's mic would be hot. Her camera glasses, linked directly to a mobile command laptop. All they needed now was bait. That came 2 nights later, when Renshaw texted her from a blocked number. "Meet me at the West Side Scrapyard, 11 p.m., don't bring your cousin." The message was short, direct, and clearly not the first time he'd done something like this. Mariah replied, "Fine, just don't waste my time." She didn't wear a wire. She wore 4. Her car was clean. Empty trunk, no phone, no laptop. Just her and the clothes on her back. As she pulled into the scrapyard, the wind pushed rusted panels and old fenders across the gravel. It was the kind of place you didn't walk into unless someone told you to. Renshaw was already there, waiting under the yellow haze of a cracked streetlight. He was alone. No backup, no flashlights. He stepped forward. "Didn't think you'd come." Mariah stepped out of the car and shrugged. "Didn't think you'd ask." He looked her up and down. "You're not like the others. You don't scare easy." She didn't speak. "You know," he said, tilting his head, "when I first saw you, I thought, she's going to cause problems. The way you watched everything. Too quiet. Too clean. But then again, maybe you just want in." Mariah narrowed her eyes. "In on what?" Renshaw stepped closer. "I've been running this block for 8 years. Got deals moving cleaner than the border. You think I don't know who's playing the game?" He reached into his coat slowly, pulled out a manila envelope, and held it up. Mariah didn't take it. "What's that?" "Proof. Insurance. Names of every officer who's taken a cut. Every deal that's gone down. Including mine. You get in, you stay in. Otherwise," he made a sharp motion with his hand. "Let's just say, Fresno's not safe for women who get curious." Mariah stepped forward slowly. She took the envelope. "I'm not curious," she said. "I'm done guessing." He smiled. "That right?" She reached up and adjusted her glasses. From 3 blocks away, Vega gave the signal. Agents moved fast. No sirens, no shouting. Just headlights, doors, and footsteps. Before Renshaw could blink, he had 6 weapons pointed at his chest and 2 agents pushing him to the ground. "Hands behind your back! Do it now!" He froze. "Mariah?" he asked, voice thin. She stepped back and pulled her badge from her jacket. Special Agent Mariah Tillman, DEA. The look in his eyes was different this time. Not fear, not confusion. It was disbelief. Like someone had ripped the floor out from under him, and he didn't even realize he'd been standing on a trap the entire time. He said nothing as they cuffed him. Mariah stood still while the agents swept the yard. One of them walked over with the envelope, gloves on, nodding once. "We got enough." She nodded. "It's done." But part of her didn't believe it yet, because arrests are just paperwork. The real reckoning was still waiting, in the courtroom, in front of everyone he thought would protect him. Back in that courtroom, it was like the world had been turned inside out. Just 2 minutes earlier, Renshaw had been leaning back like a man sitting through a boring meeting. Now he sat rigid, hands folded tightly in his lap, eyes locked on Mariah. No more smirks, no more whispering, just a man trying to figure out how his world had collapsed without him noticing. Mariah remained at the witness stand, unshaken. Judge Kendrick took off his glasses slowly, set them on the bench, and looked at her like she'd just flipped the entire script on a show he thought he'd already seen. "You're telling this court," the judge said, voice low, "that you are a federal agent who has spent the last 8 months embedded in a covert DEA operation with this department as your focus?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And your testimony today, was it authorized?" "It was prepared in full coordination with the Department of Justice and the United States Attorney's Office," she replied. "All recordings and evidence gathered have already been transferred and reviewed." A quiet stir moved through the courtroom. People who once laughed at Renshaw's offhand remarks now sat frozen, eyes darting between him and Mariah. The prosecutor stood, flipping through a folder with deliberate slowness. "Agent Tillman, let's clarify for the record. How many active surveillance recordings do you currently have tied to Detective Renshaw?" 92 video files, 74 audio clips, and 12 witness statements. "And these files, do they show him committing criminal acts?" "Yes. Bribery, evidence tampering, illegal searches, use of force, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and intimidation of a federal witness, namely me." Gasps echoed. Someone in the second row muttered, "Jesus!" Mariah kept her eyes forward. The prosecutor walked to the evidence cart and tapped the monitor. A screen lit up behind the judge, grainy black and white footage playing. There he was, Renshaw, laughing with a known dealer, slipping something into his coat pocket. Then another clip. Renshaw taking cash from a teenager and driving away. And another, Renshaw leaning into Mariah's face on her porch. You might end up saying something you can't take back. The courtroom watched in complete silence. The defense attorney finally stood, stiff and pale. Your Honor, we object to the use of these videos without proper vetting. They've been vetted, the prosecutor cut in, by federal investigators, including Internal Affairs. Judge Kendrick raised his hand. We will review admissibility in full. But for now, I've heard enough. He turned to Renshaw. Detective Renshaw, you are hereby remanded into federal custody pending further investigation. You will be escorted from this courtroom immediately. The bailiff approached, cuffs already in hand. Renshaw stood slowly, like someone waking from a long, comfortable nap and realizing the room was on fire. He didn't speak, just stared at Mariah. You were a plant, he whispered. All this time. No, she said. I was the accountability you thought would never show up. The cuffs clicked behind his back. As he was led out of the room, Mariah glanced across the pews. She saw Benton and Ruiz in the back, stone-faced, not moving. They weren't laughing now, and they knew they were next. Outside the courtroom, reporters were already gathering. Cameras, boom mics, shouts for statements. But Mariah didn't stop to talk. She walked straight to Vega's car, opened the door, and sat inside. Vega looked at her. You good? I will be, Mariah said. We still have work to do. Vega nodded once. The precinct's already on lockdown. They're pulling phone records, chat logs, hard drives. What about Wynn? He's next. His deal ends today. Mariah stared ahead through the windshield. The courthouse sat heavy behind them, sunlight bouncing off the white stone walls. She let out a slow breath. This was what justice looked like. Messy, public, and long overdue. But there was still one thing she needed to do, before she put Roosevelt Heights behind her for good. A week had passed since the courtroom eruption, but in Roosevelt Heights, time didn't move the same way. It lingered. News of Renshaw's arrest spread fast, faster than the feds expected. Not through TV or headlines, but through barbershops, front porches, back alleys, whispered between neighbors who had waited too long for justice they thought would never come. Mariah returned quietly. No badge this time, no cameras, just a hoodie, jeans, and a calm pace. She wasn't there to investigate. She was there to close a loop. She stopped by Mrs. Irene's porch, where the old woman sat fanning herself with a church program. Well, well, Irene muttered, eyeing her. Look who made it back. Mariah offered a faint smile. Had to see it through. Irene nodded slowly. Word is they finally got that dirty snake in cuffs. They did. Irene leaned back in her chair. Wasn't sure you'd still be standing. Me neither, Mariah admitted. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was mutual. Like two people who'd seen more than they let on, and didn't need to say much to understand each other. Mariah stayed only a minute before walking down the block toward the community center. It had reopened after renovations, new lights, fresh paint, and flyers on the windows for GED classes and job fairs. Inside, she found Andre in the corner, hunched over a desk with a pencil stuck behind his ear. He was helping another kid with homework, one Mariah hadn't met before. He looked up, surprised. Miss Rayner? Mariah walked over. Hey, Andre. I thought you were gone. People said you left. Yeah, she said. But I needed to come back, just for a little bit. He looked down. They said the cops were watching you. They were, she said honestly. But they're not anymore. Andre's shoulders relaxed. You okay? I am, she said. But I wanted to thank you for always treating me like I belonged here. He scratched his head, embarrassed. I didn't really do anything. You did more than you think. Before she left, she gave him a folded slip of paper. That's for your mom. It's a phone number. She should call it. It's a job program. He nodded. You gonna come back? Mariah hesitated. Maybe. You know where to find me if you need something. As she stepped back outside, she passed by the corner where she'd first seen Renshaw's SUV roll up. The curb still had the same faded yellow paint. Nothing had changed physically. But something in the air felt different. She walked to her car, where Vega waited in the driver's seat. "You done?" "For now," Mariah said, climbing in. Vega pulled away from the curb slowly. "You sure you want to transfer out? Could have had your pick after this." "I'm sure," she said. "I've seen enough of what happens in shadows. I want to work somewhere I can see daylight." Vega glanced over. "You made a difference here." Mariah looked out the window as the blocks rolled by. "I didn't come to save the neighborhood," she said quietly. "I came to hold one man accountable. But if it helped someone else walk with their head up, even for a day, then maybe it was worth it." They drove in silence after that. Back at headquarters, Internal Affairs had already brought charges against Benton and Ruiz. 4 more officers were under review. Renshaw's deal had collapsed under the weight of evidence, and his defense attorney had gone silent. But for Mariah, justice wasn't the headlines. It was seeing Andre smile like he didn't have to look over his shoulder anymore. It was knowing Mrs. Irene could sleep easier with her porch light on. It was watching a community take its voice back, one small act at a time. But before the story ended, Mariah still had something to say. Something for everyone who ever thought silence was safer than truth. People think justice always comes with a gavel and a headline, but that's not true. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a decision no one sees, through the patience it takes to outlast someone like Renshaw. For Mariah, it came the day after her final report was filed. She stood in front of her apartment mirror. No wig, no character, no backup identity. Just herself. Her curls were free. Her eyes were tired but clear. She looked older, not just from the months of tension, but from carrying the weight of a double life in a place where one wrong word could have ended everything. She thought about walking away completely, taking a desk job, going somewhere with sunlight and no need for bulletproof glass. But that wasn't how she was built. A week later, she stood in front of a group of young trainees at the DEA field office in Sacramento. Recruits, most of them in their 20s. Eyes wide, notebooks ready. She didn't start with protocol, didn't recite mission statements. She just spoke. There are people out there who wear a badge for power, not service. You're going to meet them. You might even admire some of them, until they show you who they really are. She paused, scanning the room. When they do, you have a choice. Look the other way, or do something. Someone raised a hand. What if doing something means risking everything? Mariah nodded. Then you ask yourself what it's worth to stay silent. She let that hang in the air. After the session, one of the younger agents pulled her aside. You really took him down? Renshaw? I didn't take him down, she said. He brought himself down. I just made sure someone was watching. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she used to organize evidence drives and record logs. Now it held nothing but a notepad, a pen, and a letter she hadn't sent yet. It was addressed to Renshaw. She didn't plan to mail it. It wasn't for him. It was for her. She wrote, You tried to scare me out of seeing the truth. You thought power meant no one would challenge you. You were wrong. And I want you to know, there's someone out there watching the next version of you right now. You'll never see them coming either. She folded the paper, slid it into a drawer, and closed it gently. The system hadn't changed overnight. It hadn't solved the deep cracks that let people like Renshaw rise unchecked. But it had taken one man off the street. One silence broken. One lie exposed. And sometimes that's where change begins. Mariah walked out onto her small balcony, sipping coffee as the sun settled low over the rooftops. Kids played in the street below. Someone grilled on a rusted barbecue across the lot. The world kept turning. But she knew this for sure. Truth might take time. It might move slow. But when it shows up, it doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. If you've stayed with this story until now, thank you. Stories like this matter because they reflect the real choices people face in silence every day. And if you believe in truth, real truth, then share this story. Talk about it, because someone out there needs the reminder that one voice can still make a difference.